وسهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا مع ليلى الحسيني في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues with your host, Layla Al-Husseini.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arabs, WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to another program on Radio Baladi on US Arab Radio. With me this morning is a distinguished guest, Bahraini journalist and researcher Nada Alwadi, who has been covering the Middle East region for different media outlets both regionally and internationally. She's a specialist in digital media with a special focus on digital governance and internet freedom. She is also a former Fulbright scholar. Nada holds a master's degree in journalism from the Philip Merrill School of Journalism at the University of Maryland, and she is currently a PhD candidate in Virginia Tech University in International Affairs and Public Policy. We will be talking about a very important and timely topic, journalism in the age of disinformation, the double role of social media. Welcome to the show, Nada.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Dr. Sahar, for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being with us. My first question to you is, we would like to just give the listeners a little bit of an overview about who you are, especially as a journalist. How did your interest in the field of journalism start, and how did you actually move along in this journey up till you reach this stage?
Oh, I mean, obviously, this is a long journey and it's a big question. But briefly, I have been interested in media and journalism since I was as a kid. I decided to study journalism, and I was a journalist in Bahrain. I worked for years there. I started with print media, and I was fortunate to experience working in different media outlets, from print to TV to radio, and I work in digital media now. So I could see that how different the outlets can have an impact on the message and the storytelling. I worked in the Middle East. I covered the Middle East. I currently work in the United States for a US-funded media corporation, and it's fascinating to see how different, let's say, the outlook of media is.
Very interesting. So when did you really discover this kind of journalist inside yourself? When did you say to yourself, I really want to be a journalist? That's the career I would like to have for the rest of my life. When was that particular moment for you?
I remember that moment actually vividly. I was in primary school. I am a very good writer, and one of my teachers wrote on my essay, I hope this is such a great essay, and I wish I will see you a very famous journalist one day. And somehow this dream started with me. And I learned later that journalism is I have this love-hate relationship to journalism, honestly. It's a very tough job, and it's not necessarily highly regarded, especially in the Middle East, because people don't really appreciate, I would say, what journalists do to report information and truth. It's an amazing job, and really tough, and I feel it's a noble profession, but not necessarily very well respected.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something about the difference between working as a journalist in the Arab world and in the United States. Can you just give our listeners a brief overview about some of these maybe similarities and differences? What really stood out to you as some of the differences between practicing journalism in the Arab world and practicing it in the United States?
I mean, one of the main points, obviously, is the transparency, the access to information. So for journalists, when you have the information, you can build stories and you can make more investigative reporting. In the Middle East, it's a struggle for any journalist to actually have any information. Data is not available. Going to government sources is very hard, and reaching out to the information that is available in the rest of the world is quite hard. In contrary, in the West and the United States in particular, most of the information, let's say the data about the government issues, stuff related to economy, to politics, are available, not just for journalists, for anybody for researchers and everybody else. And then when you have this data, your energy will be focused on doing more investigative pieces, because you don't have to struggle into reaching out to government officials and trying to get the information that you want to build your story around. And I feel this is key, because as long as we don't have that access to information and transparency in our region, in the Middle East, we cannot, it would be very hard for investigative reporting to flourish. There are other issues, obviously, in terms of media being independent and not governmental. Most of the media in the Middle East are funded with government money or political parties. The agenda is being set by those funders. In the West, we see, even though there are similarities, but we can see some opportunity for a more independent media to flourish and report other sides of stories, and that's very important for the audiences to hear different sides of many stories.
Absolutely. These are all very important points. Thank you for raising these points. And Nada, just to give our viewers or our listeners a little bit of an overview also of the kind of work that you've been doing and your journey, I think that one of the landmarks of your trip or your journey as a journalist has been also covering the uprising in your own home country, Bahrain. If you can just give our listeners a little bit of an overview of, how was this moment for you on a personal level as well as on a professional level? How do you actually describe this moment when you were covering the uprising in your own home country?
Of course, 2011 was a monumental moment for many journalists, I would say, in the Middle East, many countries. I was in Bahrain. I was a correspondent for USA Today, a newspaper in Bahrain, and the popular uprising started in different countries, Egypt, Tunisia, and Bahrain as well. I was on the ground. I was reporting the stories from the ground, which was quite an interesting and I would say moving experience, because I have developed, I think, as a journalist a lot because of that experience. I think that in our profession, there is a human side that is very important to recognize. When you report, you need to understand the grievances of people. It's not something that is, you treat the stories as a job when you are a journalist. But then, and it is important, and it's a news-worthy story. But there are other factors that play into the reporting, the human side of it. I think that's what made me encountering the human side, the human effect of the political issue was a very important part of my storytelling journey. It taught me a lot, definitely, and I grew. Now I care more about these aspects in my reporting.
And thank you for bringing this human aspect, because I'm sure as a native of Bahrain, covering the uprising in your own home country is something which is dear and near to your heart. So you bring the lens, the critical lens of a journalist covering the events, but also in your own mind and your own heart, also the spirit and the humanity of someone who is very much directly involved and affected by the uprising. Let me go to the point about the differences between the coverage in the Arab world and in the Middle East and compared to the United States, especially what you mentioned in terms of the difficulty in finding information. We call this the knowledge crisis. The journalists in the Arab world face the knowledge crisis, not being able to have access, as you mentioned, to news and information. Can you describe, maybe some of the hurdles or obstacles that you yourself maybe faced in your own journey in terms of trying to get access to news and information that are factual, correct, really based on evidence and correct information, and maybe some other examples from the Arab world more broadly to illustrate this point?
Many stories, I think, were left untold because of that obstacle, and it's huge. So, stories related to something very simple as, poverty, say, in several countries, or stories related to, in the Gulf, one of the big stories that we have is the migrant workers who come to the region and suffer sometimes human rights violations, and they don't live in very good standing. Finding the data on these workers, or let's say the workers in the houses, the housemaids, is really hard, and there is no real solid source of information about the data. Where do they live, and where do they come from, and all of that. And then reaching generalization or reaching an investigative angle to that story is quite hard because you don't have the information. So you need to rely on interviews and talking to some officials who will speak. So these are some of the examples that I personally encountered. In the U.S., it is fascinating when you cover something. For example, I wanted to do a story about the Arab students in the United States. What are the nationalities they come from and where they are? It took me one day to find that information. The data was available, and if it was not, you contact the source of information. They will give you the information you need because you are media. So I could totally see the difference of in terms of access of information.
Absolutely. I always tell my students you can even find information like the salary of the president of the United States or the vice president, or the budget of the United States and how much money is spent on the military. All of that is accessible and available information under the Freedom of Information Act. And unfortunately, journalists have to struggle even to find out the number of domestic workers in many parts of the Arab world and the Middle East. We'll come back to this very interesting discussion right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
If halal is important to your family, you can trust that Miramar will offer not only the highest quality halal products, but the best tasting and healthiest foods that can be placed on your family table with confidence. Miramar is the first and oldest halal certified food brand in America, serving the Arab and Muslim community, and offers a wide range of halal food products. Check out Miramar's halal food selection today by visiting Miramar's exclusive distributor, Ziad Brothers Importing, at www.ziad.com.
Life is a nonprofit charity that's provided humanitarian aid and development to people and communities for over 25 years, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Please help improve these efforts. Make your tax-deductible donation to Life now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493.
إلي ساعة عم بستناك مشان نروح نتغدى بالشام.
الشام؟
إيه بالشام ومو بالشام.
شلون صارت هي؟
بدل ما نروح نتغدى بالشام
إيه
جابوا لنا الأكلات الشامية الطيبة لعنا لهم.
وشلون بقى؟
هذا مطعم دماس عم يعمل كل الأكلات الشامية الطيبة هو.
طيبة؟
طيبة كتير.
شرفوا نتغدى سوا بمطعم دماس.
الأكل الشامي الأصيل
فقط بدمس كوزين. زوروهم على 28841 أورشاد ليك بفارمينغتون هيلز، ولطلباتكم اتصلوا على 248-987-4609. That's 248-987-4609. دمس كوزين and catering، جبنا لكم الشام لعندكم.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arabs, WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. I'm talking today about a very important topic, journalism in the age of disinformation, the double role of social media. And my guest this morning is Nada Alwadi, a veteran journalist and researcher covering the Middle East region for many years. Let's give the listeners a bit of a view about your own work right now, Nada, the kind of work you're doing in digital media and social media. What do you do exactly, and what kind of responsibilities do you actually undertake in your own job?
Okay. I worked in digital media for almost 5 years now, actually. I did data analytics, which was quite fascinating, and I learned a lot about it, how the message, how to make sure that your content is visible online, and there is a whole science behind that. You need to understand the algorithm of Facebook and Twitter and all of these social media outlets. Writing the story for the digital audience is very different now, and it's a different art, I think, art or science nowadays. We learned this old-fashioned way of telling stories for print media. Now, in the digital age, this particular art has changed a lot. So you need to be brief, you need to attract them, you need to hook them in the beginning, and then you need to market. Marketing the stories in digital media is very much embedded in the art of creating the content. So this is something that I have been working with. Engage, in fact, also digital media teaches you as a journalist that how to interact with your audience directly. So mediums in general are these. So you go on TV or radio and you don't really see or hear from your audience. In digital media, you have this interaction, direct interaction with the audiences, which is quite fascinating because you directly have evaluation and you change your content based on that particular interaction. I am currently working on a podcast project, which is something I'm very excited about. The podcast culture is not very common in the Arab world. I report in Arabic. So the Arabic audiences are not necessarily very familiar with this culture in many areas in the Arab world. Some areas are better in that sense. So I think what I'm working on is bringing something different to that audience that might be very appealing. So I'm hoping that will be great. And I'm learning a lot also about that as well. Creating stories for audio is fascinating and challenging as well.
Sounds very fascinating. We wish you best of luck with this podcast. I'm sure it's going to be a big success.
Thank you.
And I want to really, move on to a very important point, which is really the term data governance. Maybe many of our listeners are not familiar with the term data governance and what it really means. Can you please help define this term to us and maybe give us a few examples to illustrate it?
Yeah, sure. So data governance is a term that fascinated me when I started my academic journey. I am currently investigating that in my research. Data governance is basically the management of the availability, the usability, and the integrity of the data. So in that sense, we are surrounded nowadays. Of course, we need to start from there. We live in a data age, so where data is everywhere, and our data is being collected continuously everywhere we go. We use smartphones, we use smart machines everywhere in our houses, in our cars now, everywhere. So all of this data that is being collected, who owns that data? Who controls that data? Who manages this data? This is a huge topic now, and it's going to be only become bigger in the future because there is so much in stake. We need this data to be available. We need it to be usable. We need it to be secure, but we need to protect the privacy of the users. We need to make sure that this data doesn't go in the hands of people who want to harm the society or the individual. And there is so much at stake, obviously. Who should be the person who polices this data? Is it the government? Is it the data companies or the social media companies? Is it the individuals? Is it the Congress? So there's so much going on in this topic. For my interest, obviously, my personal feeling or take in this is that users need to have a voice in this field, in this arena. Data governance needs to be coming from the users. They need to know exactly where their data is going, who is collecting this data, and who's managing it, and make sure that they are also literate into understanding how the data is being collected. And all of these issues are quite problematic, I think, but important in this day and age.
Absolutely, especially when you look at big scandals like the Cambridge Analytica scandal on Facebook. These are major issues that really raise red flags about things like invasion of privacy, threat to security, whether it's national security or individual and personal security. So there are so many questions now that need answers for sure in light of this important and very tricky issue of data governance and who controls the data and why. This actually it leads us very nicely into my next question, which is about the concept of internet freedom, another thing that you're also working on and focusing on in your own research and also in your own journey as a journalist and working in this particular field of digital media. How do you see the current status of internet freedom in the world in general and in the Arab world in particular?
Yeah, I think that's also another very important topic to discuss. We learned a few years ago that the United Nations recognized access to internet as a human right. So now this right is protected, similar to the right for clean water, for example. It is a protected right it is recognized internationally. So in this day and age, people have the right to have access to the internet. However, we do go and see that there is a huge digital gap in terms of the access to the internet. This is the reality. So there are areas in which people don't have access to the internet. They don't necessarily have the hardware, the smartphones or the computers or the facilities that they can access the internet with. There are rural areas in many areas that they don't necessarily, they are not literate to use the technology to access the internet. So this feeds into the information gap. So if you don't have the equal access to the internet, you don't necessarily have the equal access to information that you need as a society to survive and to flourish. And this, of course, fits right into the discussion on the Middle East and what is happening now in many of the Arab world countries, where we see some areas, for example, the Gulf region where I come from, the internet penetration and the access to smartphones and the hardware is quite high. It's one of the highest in the world. This region is considered, compared to the other Middle Eastern countries, as a rich area which has a lot of access to the information. Many of the other regions, however, in the Middle East are not similar to that situation. So, for example, in rural areas in Sudan or Egypt or in some areas in Iraq now, there is not even internet. So, so when you, as a journalist, and somebody is trying to create content and market it or try to disseminate it in the Middle East, we really need to be aware of these differences now, because the information gap and the internet gap is a reality, and the information is not spread equally between all of these regions. So, of course, this all feeds into the discussion on internet freedom. The knowledge of the users as well is an important topic in internet freedom as well. So when you are aware of the access, the culture of the internet, as a user, you can, of course, navigate how to access the internet, even if it was not necessarily provided to you by the government or by the telecommunication companies. In some countries, of course, the access to the internet might be regulated somehow. So you have access, but this access is monitored and regulated by governments, and that's also another problem. And in the Middle East is a very clear example on that, because even though the access is there, but this access is being slowed down, and some websites are blocked. Some particular information is not necessarily available for this audience. So all of this limits the freedom of internet and limits people to get access to their information in this day and age.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. The digital divide is definitely a reality. Digital gap is definitely a reality, and it does create this information gap, as you mentioned. But there's also definitely, especially in the Arab world, in the Middle East, also the political situation, the political barriers in terms of regulating how much freedom and how much information people can have on the internet when it comes to access to information, and also who controls this flow of information. Can you also give our listeners a brief overview of what is meant by the Twitter scandal? What happened exactly, briefly, like in just a couple of minutes before we go to the commercial break, just for them to understand this as an example? What can we really learn from this Twitter scandal? What happened?
Of course, this is such a fascinating story that's happened lately. Many people in recent years have been talking about the role played by social media companies, and how they actually have your data, and they can control it, they can sell your data, and all of that. The recent, and we have seen Mark Zuckerberg going to the Congress, being questioned by senators. Now we have Twitter under attack, because the recent scandal is that former employees of Twitter, 3 of them, were actually spies by a foreign government. They were paid to give information, data about human rights activists to a foreign government, Saudi in particular. And this was finally, this was investigated by the FBI. Finally, the FBI got all the evidence they needed, and they captured one of them. The other 2 are not captured yet. They are in the wanted list. So as users of Twitter, I think what this teaches us is that our data is not safe, even if we can trust. We have learned, and that all of these companies are telling us to trust them with our information, but our information is not necessarily protected. Many questions were raised even before this scandal about Twitter, and some of the trends that are happening the trends are changing based on some kind of algorithm changes that Twitter does. Is Twitter being manipulated? Is some people in the company being manipulated or being working as spies? Are these companies at fault? We don't know, but what we know now, I think after this scandal, many other scandals, that our data is not necessarily being protected. It is like we put so much data on social media about ourselves, what we do, where we go, who we meet, and we don't realize that all of this data is sellable and it's very valuable. So these companies might use this and sell it to people who want to get our information, who want to harm us maybe. And it is becoming really, really scary, I think, in terms of, the users. I personally don't post anything personal on social media anymore for years now. I don't trust my information to be there. Of course, social media is very nice. I work in social media. I like it. It is a great place to connect with others. But the problem is, how can you make sure that your data is not being manipulated and used? Yeah.
Absolutely. This is a very, very important issue. We'll come back to this very interesting discussion right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Kashat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab offers a great array of your favorite Mediterranean meals. Meals range from lamb specialties, shawarma sandwiches, seafood dinners, and they offer special big trays of your favorite food, plus much more. Kashat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab address is 32839 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills. Their phone number is 248-538-9552. That number again is 248-538-9552, and the supermarket is open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Kashat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab will definitely leave you satisfied.
The Rama Relief Foundation provides humanitarian aid into areas inside of war-torn Syria, as well as aid to the refugees who have fled to the neighboring countries in the Middle East. The foundation offers food baskets, container shipment, mental health, education, soup kitchens, and more. Go to ramarelief.org or call 248-990-4247. Any donation amount made to Rama will go to sustaining many lives. Call now 248-990-4247.
مرحبا سعيد.
اهلا علا.
ليش هالمقابله الفاتره هي؟ بيقول المثل لاقيني ولا تغديني.
يمه زعلتي، شنو رايك اذا لقيتك وايضا غديتك باحسن مطاعم ميشيغان، مطعم اشتار؟
والله فكره، افضل الاطباق والمقبلات العربيه والعراقيه واحلى ملقا.
ولا تنسين اللحوم الطازجه مباشره من ملحمه اشتار لزباين اشتار، وملحمه اشتار توفر اختيارات متنوعه من كافه انواع اللحوم وباسعار متميزه وجوده ايضا مميزه. ملحمة اشتار تقع على 36865 راين رود في مدينة ستيرلينغ هايت.
وأكيد أحلى لمة وأطيب لقمة في مطعم عشتار اللي عنوانه 3625 15 مايل رود في مدينة ستيرلينغ هايت. هاتف 586-698-2585
يلا علا.
يلا عشتار، للجودة وكرم الضيافة عنوان.
مطعم عشتار.
When it comes to reproductive medicine, IVF Michigan Fertility Centers are the recognized leaders. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 5 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. As a founding member of IVF Michigan Fertility Centers, Dr. Nicholas Shama is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. Dr. Shama has performed over 10,000 IVF cases and has helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. American board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility, Dr. Nicholas Shama is a very caring, compassionate, expert physician that understands not only the medical but also the emotional toil of infertility on his patients. When it's time, get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio. Call toll-free 855-952-9600, 855-952-9600.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. on Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arabs, WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. We're talking today about journalism in the age of disinformation, the double role of social media. And with me this morning discussing this important topic is journalist and researcher Nada Alwadi. Nada, the topic of our discussion is journalism in the age of disinformation. If we can just shed some light on this concept of /disinformation/misinformation, what is exactly meant by this term or this concept? How can we possibly illustrate it or make it clearer to our listeners today by maybe giving a few examples? And what is the role of social media and digital media in that regard?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important topic to discuss today because we do literally live in an age of disinformation right now. There is so much information. We used to live in an era where there is no information, not enough information. Now, especially as journalists, we live in a new era which has so much information that it is confusing and it's very hard to identify and verify which information is true and which is not. The disinformation era is being formulated by not necessarily just randomly. The disinformation, there are strategic, organized groups that actually feeds into the culture of disinformation and make the image or the news quite confusing, I think, to anybody who follow the social media. So if you are someone who gets your information and your news from news outlet from social media, you will definitely be misinformed and you will be confused. In this information, actually, there is an important term that we need to learn is the cyber army. So there are groups online, especially in Twitter and Facebook. There are groups online who are being funded, directly funded, mostly by governments, to misinform you. So to kind of spread the messages in a way or another. And this has been documented and researched, and there are so many articles written about that. How many of the, let's say, troll accounts or spam accounts appear suddenly, and somehow there will be a new trend in Twitter or something new that everybody follows, but it was fabricated. It's not an original explanation of what is happening on the ground. And that's something that we, as users of social media, we really need to know about and be educated about. That what we hear about in social media is not necessarily a reflection of what people think or of a reflection of the reality. It is a reflection of people who have interest, governments who have interest, and people who have their own agendas. They go there and sometimes spread lies or hate messages. Of course, I think the U.S. in particular has been a victim for this. For many years now, we have been listening about the Russian interference in the American elections and how the cyber troops and the cyber armies, the Russian cyber armies, have been somehow manipulating the discussion on social media, and which led to a different result in the elections. And that's a huge argument and a huge story. In the Middle East, of course, this is also a very important story. And we have seen many manipulation happening in many ways. Cyber armies are pretty much alive in this area, very alive and well, and they are working very hard to create bubbles of information online, and people are very confused. In this information also, I want to mention what happened with ISIS, the ISIS experience. ISIS was very active online in social media for a few years. They kind of became very savvy in terms of dealing with users online and how to reach out to them. So there is a lot of hate speech and and violent speech on social media. The remnants is still there. And so anyway, so back to the disinformation factor. For us journalists, this is a very challenging time to be somebody who works for truth, who wants to report truth, because it is very hard to identify truth. In fact,
And it's
I
also
remember,
changing our whole perception. Like at the beginning of the internet, we were like celebrating it and hailing it as like this is going to be the voice of the voiceless, and it's going to give an equal opportunity to everyone, and everybody is going to have an equal chance on the internet. Obviously, this is not the case. You have the digital divide that we talked about before. You also have political players and economic players, and you have those who have power and agenda, like you just mentioned now, who can control the internet and cyberspace in very scary ways. So, in light of all of that, what then could be the responsibility of the average person, the average citizen like me and you? How can we possibly engage with social media in a much more intelligent and smart way, and also in a safe way to protect ourselves and those who are dear and near to us?
yeah, I think that's a very important question. I want to mention one thing that an activist actually told me. This particular activist from Iraq was working on a campaign to counter the violence and the attacks from ISIS, and he told me, I learned something. People don't really want to hear the truth. It was a very hard thing to learn, and it was very painful to learn. But many of them, in some instances, he felt that people wanted to believe the lies. And I mean, I don't know if he's true or not. What he reached, the conclusion is right or wrong. But I think the spread of lies and this information on social media, the users take responsibility for that too. Even if there are so many factors and many players in this game, but the users themselves are the ones who disseminate this misinformation. So they have an active role in that. And maybe it's basically because of the media illiteracy. People are not aware of how to use social media. So, people are taught computer science in schools and data and coding and algorithms and all of that. But the social context of it, the content of social media and how to verify it and how to be intelligent about consuming that information, maybe this culture is not necessarily solid among social media users, and that's what we need to focus on. We need to teach the users about that particular aspect, the social aspect of it, the disinformation factor. When you like something, when you share it, when you link, when you click on a particular link and add a view to a particular story, what are you doing to the sphere of information online? And I think that's so important. It's not, we shouldn't take the like or the share lightly. We need to think about what we are sharing. Where did this come from? Why are we sharing this to somebody else? Maybe we are part of spreading the lies, and that's very scary, I think, and everybody should take responsibility in that.
Absolutely. These are very important points. I think we need to have digital literacy and media literacy courses to be taught maybe in schools, not just in colleges and universities, taking into account how young people are now when they get on the internet and social media. I'm seeing young people and even children with their own, tablets and their own, electronic devices. So we need definitely more awareness in this area, which takes me to my next question, which is really about the dual role or the double role of social media. Basically what could be done overall in order to maximize the benefits of social media, like interactivity, immediacy, all of the stuff that we've been talking about before, and also minimize some of the harms and damages, like, the misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, all the stuff that we've also been discussing. What could be some of these strategies moving forward to maximize the benefit and minimize the harm?
For individuals, I think we need to understand that we live in our own bubbles that we created by ourselves. So each person, each user has their own people who they follow, and mostly they follow the people who are similar to them, who have similar views, and this creates like bubbles of information that you don't see the other at all. Uh, I think, and that's very clear in the social media in the Arab world as well. So there, people live in their own bubbles. So what we need to do is, of course, people need to first open up to listen to the others, follow media outlets. Media is still alive and well. I know most people follow social media because it is the source of information, and I'm not against that. I just think that people need to be aware that the context of social media is not necessarily yet being filtered and governed in the right way. So media, traditional media, respected media is very much alive and well, and it is still a very good, important source of information which needs to be added to this flow of information that we get every day. So I think people need to really care on of how what are the sources of information they are getting into. In terms of societies, I think as societies we need to really understand that we need to have a voice in terms of the governing of the data and governing the information that we get. It shouldn't be one-way flow. It should be two-way flow. People have to always engage in any content that will be given. They need to filter themselves and don't take things for granted. So if like account that is verified by Twitter, does that mean this account is truthful? No, it doesn't. We need the users, the communities on Twitter are the ones who verify the user. If they lie, they need to watch, they keep an eye on who is lying, who's spreading lies. They need to watch that so they can filter this community and clean it from the hate and all of that.
Absolutely, very important points. I think that the idea of taking responsibility for our actions on social media, things like liking, posting, reposting, sharing, retweeting, all of that stuff. What is the role of the average citizen and all of that? That again brings us back to the issue of digital literacy and media literacy that we talked about before, and also the idea of the echo chamber or living in our own digital media bubble are also very important points. We're going to come back again to this very interesting discussion right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
If halal is important to your family, you can trust that Miramar will offer not only the highest quality halal products, but the best tasting and healthiest foods that can be placed on your family table with confidence. Miramar is the first and oldest halal certified food brand in America, serving the Arab and Muslim community, and offers a wide range of halal food products. Check out Miramar's halal food selection today by visiting Miramar's exclusive distributor, Ziad Brothers Importing at www.ziad.com.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Iman Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Iman Nakash. See Dr. Iman Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937, 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
إلي ساعة عم بستناك مشان نروح نتغدى بالشام.
الشام؟
إيه بالشام ومو بالشام.
شلون صارت هي؟
بدل ما نروح نتغدى بالشام
ايه
جابوا لنا الأكلات الشامية الطيبة لعنا لهم.
وشلون بقى؟
هذا مطعم دماس عم يعمل كل الأكلات الشامية الطيبة هو.
وطيبة؟
طيبة كتير.
شرفوا نتغدى سوا بمطعم دماس.
الأكل الشامي الأصيل فقط بدمس كوزين. زوروهم على 28841 أرشد لك بفارمينغتون هيلز، ولطلباتكم اتصلوا على 248-987-4609. That's 248-987-4609. دمس كوزين and catering، جبنا لكم الشام لعندكم.
Life is a nonprofit charity that's provided humanitarian aid and development to people and communities for over 25 years, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Please help improve these efforts. Make your tax-deductible donation to Life now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arabs, WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we're talking today about a very important and timely topic. We're talking about disinformation, journalism in the age of disinformation, the dual role or double role of social media. And with me this morning discussing this important topic is veteran journalist and researcher Nada Alwadi. Nada, we have just a few minutes left in the program, and I would like to discuss really a more clearer focus on the Arab world more specifically. Let's start with your own home country, Bahrain. What is the current status of digital activism in this country? Like the cyber war between the regime and the opponents or the protesters and activists, what is the current status now?
Bahrain, similar to many of the Arab countries, actually, especially in the Gulf region, what we see now is total control by governments to the media and media sphere. So most of the newspapers, the TV channels, and all of that are controlled by the messages of the governments, and this is an issue that we have seen across the board in most of the Middle Eastern countries. The digital media, it was, as you mentioned earlier, it was the hope that, it is giving the space for alternative media to flourish. But now, digital media is quite integrated to the social life of users. However, it's still being monitored closely and regulated closely by government entities. This is the issue in Bahrain and many other countries in the Gulf region and the Arab world as well. So if you want to see a particular account, or you want to work on open an Instagram account to report news, you need to be regulated by the official government. And this has been very limiting because the other voices are not being heard. The many stories are not being told because of this total, let's say, control by one entity. It doesn't necessarily help with the internet freedom and the freedom of speech. So in terms of freedom of speech, I have seen some of my colleagues, journalists, starting their own new, let's say, online services for news, trying their best to report. Some of them are very successful in their own communities. They have their own audiences and everything, but the challenges are very huge. And the challenges I have seen as somebody who was in the US as well, independent media always suffer from challenges because it is not sustainable. So it has to rely on the contribution of advertisements or donations, and that in the Arab world has not been very sustainable. Some experiences in the West, in the United States, have been quite successful, I think, to some extent. Democracy now comes to my mind in that sense as an alternative media. But I think we have a long way to go in the Arab world, and it is a reflection, first of all, the culture and how they value the journalism and the information and the true information that they give. And of course, it goes back to governments. If they are authoritarian, if they are creating an environment of free speech, or they are oppressing on the speech or the opinions? All of these questions are very important to discuss when we talk about digital media and the new age.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think free media will be alive as long as you have people who want it, who fight for it, and who use it.
Absolutely. We have just a couple of minutes left in the program, and I just want very quickly in 1 minute, since you're talking about the freedom and moving forward, we're now seeing a new wave in the Arab world in terms of a new wave of uprisings, right? In Algeria, in Sudan, in Iraq, in Lebanon. Can we have some hopes now in terms of maybe a different role for social media, digital media in this particular era and moving forward? Just like in 1 minute, please.
I think this new wave is proving that social media is still a very good tool to mobilize people around a message, to voice their messages, to be visible, and it's great. And I think all these countries in Iraq, Lebanon, Algeria, Sudan have been using it in an amazing way. They learned many lessons from the other Arab countries who had previous uprisings. They need to also, kind of counter many of the attacks and the hate speech that always spread. The war. Now we live in an age of weaponizing social media. So social media is literally a weapon, and it is a weapon with it's a sword of double edges.
Double-edged sword.
Yes, exactly. So anybody can come and use it against you as well. So they have to up their game all the time, and they have to always be able to move forward and use it for their advantage. And that is always going to be a challenge.
Absolutely. But let's hope also that with the challenge also comes certain opportunities and certain good hopes for the future as well. You said something about the future of social media. So just in 1 minute, very quickly, are you optimistic about the future of social media and how social media can be used in the world in general and also in the Arab, Middle Eastern world in particular? Are you optimistic in your outlook on the future of social media and its role moving forward?
I think I am always optimistic. I'm hoping that people will be more aware of this tool, and they are. We see evidence of that. I think the future, I cannot talk about the future without discussing the artificial intelligence and the algorithms that are changing everything, even in social media. So our data, everything, the machine now is learning a lot about us, and maybe our battle in the future will be a bit different. And the Middle East is pretty much in the middle of that as well. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. Smart cities are expanding, and you have sensors everywhere. Your data is being collected. So all of this is making it harder, actually, to comprehend the future, making it more challenging. But I am optimistic because I think as long as we are aware of the challenges as humans and as citizens of the world who are fighting for freedom and protecting freedom of expression, we will definitely be able to up our game and move forward.
Indeed, that is indeed the hope, and that is indeed the dream, that we want to use social media for the betterment of our own countries, communities, and societies, and the betterment of the world as a whole, overcoming the challenges, overcoming the threats and dangers, and maximizing the benefits, the opportunities that are ahead of us. Thank you so much, my guest today, Nada Alwadi, for being with us and for this very rich and informative discussion. Thank you.
Of course, my pleasure.
And good luck with your podcast as well. Wishing you good luck with that.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks to all our listeners today. Thank you for being with us. Have a great day and goodbye.